Good morning. Good morning. We are about to get started here for our ninth annual State of Black Shreveport Symposium and Economic Development Summit. We want to get started right at 10 o'clock to dispel the stereotypes of CP time. And so, without any further ado, let me give you an overview of the beginning of the program. Our opening prayer will be by Pastor Brian Wilson of the Galilee Baptist Church. And then we will have honoring local history makers by Derek Henderson. And I'll offer some welcoming comments. And then we will have welcoming comments from Mayor Adrian Perkins and Why We Do State of Black Shreveport by Lynn Cawthorn. So now, without further ado, let's look to God in prayer with Pastor Brian Wilson.
Let us pray. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, you who have brought us thus far along the way. God, we thank you for this day. We thank you, God, for this occasion, these moments that we are sharing together as your people and as a people. I pray to God today, Lord, that you would touch each and every panelist, every person that participates. I pray for the founder of this movement today. God, I pray for the state of Black Shreveport. I pray, God, that your hand will be visible in everything that we do. I pray, God, today, Lord, that you would continue to have mercy upon us and that you would continue to be with us on this journey. It's in your son's name that, amen.
Amen. Okay, now, Derek Henderson.
I'm backstage. Good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. The state of Shreveport would like to recognize some local individuals who answered their clarion call to commit the selfless act of service, whether commissioned by the Almighty, elected by the people, or appointed by the board. Black Shreveport and all of Shreveport has benefited greatly because of them.
Did we lose Mr. Henderson? Brent, can we pick up, see what's the connection problem with Derek Henderson? Okay, so I'll say, so obviously it looks like we've lost Mr. Henderson. We will chime him back in when we get the opportunity to do such. Technical people are working on that. At this moment right now, I want to offer welcoming comments for the 9th Annual State of Black Shreveport Symposium and Economic Development Summit. I want to first begin by recognizing our sponsors, and those persons are Griggs Enterprises. Make sure you go by a local McDonald's today and get you a meal. The second sponsor is Redwood Property Management Company, which is owned and operated by our good friend Ryan Williams. The Cawthorn Financial Group, which is my entity. You need financial planning and some business development strategies, please give us a call. And we'll also have sponsorships by Washington and Wells, local attorneys here in the city, need criminal defense. The different legal things they do here locally, please give them a call. And last but not least, Duran and Cawthorn, who are a entity across the state of Louisiana. They are domiciled in Lafayette, Louisiana. So if you have relatives there, you can also give them a call for legal services. Thank you very much. I want to also bring you guys attention to our monthly newsletter that we put out. It's called the State of Black Shreveport Newsletter. It was published out sent out on yesterday. And if you would like to get this newsletter on a bi-monthly basis, please go to our website, State of Black Shreveport Facebook page, and hit the link that says, please let me join the newsletter on a bi-weekly basis. But there again, I want to thank everybody for attending in to our 9th Annual State Blacks Report. And we want to pray for this local city that as we move through this COVID situation, that we are adhering to protocols, wearing our masks, social distancing. And if you're able to get the vaccine and sign up for the vaccine, please do so. But today, meeting and today's symposium is going to center on an intergenerational conversation that needs to be had here in the city of Shreveport between Generation X and the Millennials. If we're to move the city forward in a progressive manner and do the things that we need to do, this conversation needs to be had. So what we like to do is this to be the genesis of the conversation with the generational groups, and then we want to come back and include the baby boomers on the next fireside chat that we're engaged in. So I want you guys to sit back and enjoy this conversation, and there will be opportunity for the audience to submit comments on our Facebook page, and toward the end of the dialogue, we will address those questions. Now we will have welcoming comments by the Mayor of Shreveport, Mayor Adrian Perkins. Okay, so it looks like Mr. Perkins has not gotten on just yet. And so now we will move on to another part of we will now move on to another part of the program, which would be, why do we do the State of Black Shreveport? And before I get in there, we want to encourage everybody who's listening, please share your this link to people who want to see this today live. It's live both on my YouTube page, our YouTube channel, and it's also live on our Facebook page, the State of Black Shreveport Facebook page. But the reason why we do the State of Black Shreveport is to first honor Black History Month. We do it annually in the month of February, and it's typically the last week of February. And since 9 years ago, by doing this, we always wanted Black History Month to be the backdrop of what we would do for the State of Black Shreveport. We also take this opportunity to honor local luminaries. And as Derek was alluding to earlier, that list of people he was going to honor, when we can get him back, we will allow him to do so. And the third thing we want to do is to have a dialogue and a discussion about issues that are germane to the city of Shreveport, and particularly the African-American community. And so whether that's education, whether that's economic development, whether that's teenage pregnancy, crime, whatever it is in the community, we would like to have an honest discussion about the state of Black Shreveport on an annual basis, and take that dialogue and turn it into policies, whether it be by elected officials, or whether it be coalescing with churches and civic groups, NAACP, places, entities like that, to advance our agenda as an African-American people. Also, over this 9-year journey, if you will, when we first started out, we've got a lot of pushback, quote unquote, from our brothers in the white community. They felt that this was a sort of a pushback or dividing people. But what's the beautiful thing about this? W.B. Du Bois said in 1903, when he wrote the book, The Souls of Black Folk, and he said that the 20th century would be dictated by the color line. And I suggest to you that in the 21st century, we'll do the same thing. And so the last year, we have saw the rise of social justice, racial tension here in America, the death of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and a host of African Americans killed at the hands of police. So I also sponsor a group here in the city of Shreveport called the Two Win, Together We Win Network. And on last Wednesday, we had a discussion, and I thought it was very eye-opening. We went through a survey that discussed whether or not groups like Black Lives Matter, State of Black Shreveport actually divide people. And there were 3 of our white cohorts who said, after going through these racial discussions we've been having with two win over the last 5, 6 years, they have learned and got to understand better what Black Lives Matter. And they understood it started off as a hashtag and it's also an organization. But most importantly, you would always hear when Black Lives Matter first came out, people were saying, or especially some white brothers and sisters would suggest that all lives matter. But they come to understand that that's not the issue. The issue is that we're not saying or denigrating any other race of people. We're only saying in the Black community, we want you to know that our lives matter. And one person said it should be Black Lives Matter too. So it's not to denigrate anyone else. It's to call for the recognition that Black Lives Matter. So you see it in the NFL, the NBA, and a lot of different places right now. 3 years ago, you wouldn't have never saw the hashtag Black Lives Matter in some of these places, but now you do see it. And I think that we find ourselves in a junction of the city of Shreveport, that it's time to have the uncomfortable conversations, the unpopular conversations with our white brothers and sisters and cohorts. We understand what are some of the challenges and legitimate gripes they make, whether it be the tax structure here, whether it be some of the things they want done in South Louisiana. I just think that state of Black Shreveport is ready and prepared to come to the table with honest brokers and have that conversation. It ain't gonna be easy. It's gonna be difficult. But I often tell people that the way we find ourselves, this should be a lot more prosperous city than what it is. We're located on I-20 where it meets I-49. We're centrally located 5 hours to the east, 5 hours to the west of most major southern towns. And at a minimum, Shreveport, Louisiana should be a transportation hub or a center of economics just by the virtue of where it's located at. And so as we move forward into the 2020, 2022, it's time to have the uncomfortable conversations and how we move Shreveport forward. So I want you guys to join us. We will be doing additional fireside chats that discuss this matter. But if Shreveport is going to be the progressive city we need it to be, we need to bring honest brokers to the table to make it happen. So, having said that, we will move. Brent, were we able to get Derek back on? Okay. Now we will go into our part of the program, which is entitled Community Perspective. We will start with an NAACP update by Michael Lafitte, who is the spokesperson and board member at the NAACP, followed by the African American Chamber of Commerce update with Billy Anderson, who is the executive director. And we will have a COVID-19 update with my cohort, Stephen Jackson of the Kettle Parish Commission, representing District 3.
Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to give us a quick update of the Shreveport branch of the NAACP. The elephant in the room, let me address that first. Let's say for the past 10 to 11 months, since the passing of our President Emeritus, Mr. Lloyd Thompson, you've seen a lot of, lack of better terms, a lot of drama that's been played out with the local organization. I assure you that those type of things are being looked into, investigated, and what we're ready to do, we're ready to hit the ground rolling to make sure that this organization, that we're able to take it to higher heights. Our organization on the local side possesses some things that others throughout the state does not. Firstly, the Shreveport chapter, number one, is the oldest branch of the NAACP in the state of Louisiana. Secondly, we have the largest member base of lifetime members throughout the state. We are currently working and engaging in things that are going on daily throughout this organization. Some things aren't public. There are a lot of things that we do when we're fighting for economic development, we're fighting for jobs, we're fighting for housing and other things, that we don't make these things public. The reason that we don't do that is some things are dealing with confidentiality. You don't want to go to a person's job and you're fighting for their employment, and they know that they have, others know that they have the NAACP involved, and that may hurt them with their next job that comes about in the case that something goes on with that one. Currently, we have one of the strongest member bases that we've had in a while. We're at about 400 members strong, and we're looking to grow off of that. As I do know that, and most of you have heard, that there is a upcoming election to redo the election that was done on November the 7th. That election was challenged by some others, and they did have the right to challenge that election. The way the process goes is that in the case that a candidate loses the election, they do have the right to challenge the results. They challenged the results. They were successful in that challenge, and now we're to this point now to where we're doing what we have to do to redo the election. As of now, we hadn't received any word from state or national on when that election would be. I was told 2 days ago that they're looking to have this done before the end of March. The election will more than likely be done via electronically to where you will receive an email. You'll cast your ballot through the email and send it back. So that's how I was told a couple of days ago. That's subject to change as soon as we get off of this line. On tomorrow, we'll be broadcasting live from Galilee Baptist Church. We'll be having our Founders Day celebration, which was supposed to be on last week, but due to the storms, we just thought that it was appropriate that we move this forward. I'm sorry, that we postpone it and move it a week out. So tomorrow at 5:30, we'll be broadcasting live. It'll be done our social media platforms as well as the platforms of Galilee Baptist Church under the direction of Pastor Brian Wilson. And it'll just be a 30 to 45-minute conversation about our founders and also where we're taking the leadership of our historic organization. And that would be the end of our report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lafitte. Thank you very much. Mr. Billy Anderson.
Oh, yes. Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to quickly give an update on the status of the Shreveport Bossier African American Chamber of Commerce. We have an exciting new board, and the board pretty much came up with some goals for the new year, and I just want to share that with you guys. We want to increase the value, the voice, and the vision of the African American businesses in Shreveport. We plan to do that in several ways by basically highlighting emerging new businesses, developing plans for Black new businesses and doing more advocacy, and also building capacity for those businesses. We do need your help just to get started. And that's to push more Black businesses. So as you see us advertise more on our social media pages and on our website, we really need you guys to promote those businesses and make sure that you shop there often and spend your Black dollars there. We all know that the Black dollar only stays in the community for about 6 hours. So our goal is to really change that narrative and create more opportunities for Black people to spend more money at Black businesses. We also need your help in providing resources for these businesses. Since the new board came on in January, we've been working closely with Fair Share in order to increase their capacity and have more Black-owned businesses join that program to get some more of those contracts with the city and state. We're also looking to start new programs in order to help out Black businesses in Shreveport Bossier. I do want to be the first to announce that we're doing a 3-day expo during the Bayou Classic. So that's going to include about 100 local vendors. So during that time, people will be able to go to the convention center with social distancing and stop by there to check out vendors from all over the state of Louisiana. We do have an awesome keynote speaker that will be speaking at that time, as well as different Black legislative breakfasts. The Northwest Louisiana Makers Fair, they'll be there as well doing different activities with the kids. So I do invite you guys to grow with the chamber. We're heading in an exciting new direction, and I look forward to working with you guys.
We want to thank Mr. Anderson for that those comments, and I want to make a note right here that at one time we did these things called the local cash mobs, and it was always a collaborative effort between the NAACP, the African American Chamber, the Minority Suppliers Institute, and the State of Black Shreveport. And at any way possible, we like to maybe we can continue to do that. A cash mob is simply an opportunity for us to literally go to a Black-owned businesses and mob them with customers, whether it's a restaurant, retail store, or any other type of business. Having said that, we'll move right along to Commissioner Jackson.
Yes, good morning, everybody, and I want to thank Commissioner Cawthorn for hosting this particular forum annually. Uh, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Commissioner Jackson, representing District 3. You may not see me. The person you see on my screen is a testament to the state of Black Shreveport. He's not a Shreveport native, and he's no relation to me, but he's the former mayor of the city of Atlanta, which is Maynard Jackson, who set forth the precedents and paradigm for which changed the structure of how Atlanta did business with African Americans and inclusion of Black-owned businesses. He famously said, "Weeds will grow in the field where the Hartsfield Jackson Atlanta airport is if minorities and African Americans, specifically African Americans, are not able to participate in the economic wealth building process of Atlanta." And they almost ran him out of town for that, but he did it. I'm here today to speak specifically on COVID-19 and the COVID-19 update. We all have been affected by COVID-19, but now we have an opportunity to respond. We're sort of rounding the curve, but we don't want folks we don't want people to let up and think that COVID-19 is gone. I believe, and I have not seen the numbers yet, but I believe within the next week or so, we're going to see some better numbers than we have seen in quite some time. I do believe the snow, the freeze that took place last week helped us out a lot, but it also hampered the testing ability. But what it did do is it gave people an opportunity for 5 to 6 days to sit in place in one spot. And so there was no community spread. And that's really and truly where we have been losing the fight with COVID-19 is, folks going out, hanging out in places as opposed to hunkering down and doing those mitigation measures. So I fully suspect that next week we'll see better numbers. I do know that hospitalizations is on the decline. Deaths sort of took an uptick in the last week or two, but that is normal. It's unfortunate, but that is normal because deaths usually lag behind. But the death rate is sort of leveling out. And again, the test positive case really and truly over the last month has been dropping. Our test positive count here in Caddo. Vaccinations are going, and they're going great. Those individuals who are in the categories, we encourage you to give the vaccine a try. Being a part of the Unified Command Group, I got my vaccination the other day, and it was less than 25 minutes in and out. So I want to encourage as many people to go get the vaccine. But as we are seeing a decline in test positive cases, we're seeing a decline in hospitalizations, and we're ramping up vaccinations. What we have to be focused on as elected officials and community leaders is how do we recover from the economic fallouts of COVID-19. In Congress today, the House early this morning at about 1 o'clock Eastern time, so it would have been just after midnight here, passed the COVID-19 American Rescue Plan put forth by President Biden. I'd like to take this time to note that our Congressman Mike Johnson voted against that. And you might say, okay, well, what did he vote against? And how does that affect me? In that bill, we'll send another $7 million to Caddo Parish to help with rental assistance. In that bill, we'll send more than likely $70 to $80 million to Caddo Parish. And that's probably going to be split between the city of Shreveport and the parish of Caddo to do things that, one, will help mitigate COVID-19, but respond to the economic effects of COVID-19. Again, that's going to be close to 70 to 80 million with an M dollars. And then you have funding for broadband deployment to rural and low income areas. We could do things where I know the state sort of prohibits local government from delivering high-speed internet. But what we can do is we can work with the Biden administration and say, look, we want to possibly buy down the rate so people can make it more affordable to receive the high-speed internet. There's infrastructure dollars that are also a part of that package. And I know that infrastructure in some cases in the local sense can be a little bit divisive. But I'm not going to get into the weeds on that, but there are infrastructure dollars within the COVID-19 package to help communities respond to infrastructure. There's not a lot of infrastructure, but there is some in there. There's more money for small businesses. We know that the PPP program and the EIDL loan program help keep a lot of business afloat. And it helped a lot of companies also grow their capacity as well. So we need to be on the phone pressing Senator Cassidy and Senator Kennedy, because now it's going to go to the Senate to support this legislation. We're not asking them to support President Biden. We're not asking them to support Nancy Pelosi. We're asking them to support Caddo Parish. And we need to make sure that we take every position, whether it's adopting resolutions by your organization, whether it's doing a call to action to your memberships. If you're the NAACP, if you're the local DPEC, if you're the Chamber of Commerce, your members need to be calling Cassidy and Kennedy's office on a daily or weekly basis, asking them to support resources that are going to come to Caddo Parish. Right now, we're getting ready to roll out the Emergency Rental Assistance Program in Caddo Parish. I'm excited about that because we'll have an opportunity to meet needs of people here in our community. And so there's a lot on the table. There's a lot at stake. I'll close my comments by simply saying, Commissioner Cawthorn and I talk about this all the time. When these resources get here, we need to be ready. We don't need to be getting ready. We need to be ready. And we need to have not shovel ready, but shovel worthy and idea worthy projects on the table to implement to help the minority and African American community. We can't be afraid to look in the mirror and see that, one, we were already disproportionately affected by the economies before COVID-19, and COVID-19 exacerbated that. So we're going to be calling on programs that are going to support African American businesses, and we're going to be unintentional. We're going to be intentional and unapologetic about supporting African American programs. That's not saying that we don't support our other brothers and sisters, but we want to be intentional and unapologetic about supporting those that we know where a disparity exists, whether it's housing, whether it's business, whether it's healthcare, you name it. We have to be intentional about putting those resources in the community where we know they're needed, and we'll do the most good and have the greatest impact. So I'm excited and looking forward to working with everybody, and looking forward to working with Commissioner Cawthorn to roll out a lot of these opportunities that's going to come forward. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson, for those comments and that update on COVID. One again, we're going to do a check to see if we got Mr. Henderson back on. Mr. Ladden? Was he able to come back in? If not, we'll get ready to move right into the panel discussions. And right before we do that, I want to give a shout out to Brent Ladden and Young Pros Professionals, who have been the video people for the State of Black Shreveport from day one. And so when we roll out the 10th annual event next year, which will be at the convention center, and hopefully and prayerfully we will be out of COVID, it's going to be a sight to see. And lastly, I want to give recognition to the 2021 State of Black Shreveport committee members, which are Marilyn Hartley, Derek Henderson, Percy Jones, Kevin Lusser Sr., Sylvester Marshall, Kenesha West, Ryan Williams, Dr. Terrence Vincent, and myself. And so let's gear ourselves up to get ready for this dynamic discussion. I've been waiting, hand on at the edge of my seat to hear this. And so now we'll turn you over to the capable hands of our moderator, Dr. Melvin Williams. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm hoping so. I am excited to be here. I want to thank Lynn Cawthorn for always organizing a phenomenal event. Also, a very needed event. Without something like the State of Black Shreveport that continues to inform and enlighten all of us in the Shreveport community, I just don't know where we'd be. So congratulations to you, Lynn Cawthorn, on a job well done. So let's get to the program. Are our panelists there? Oh, I see them coming on. We have a phenomenal, these fantastic faces. I'm going to start introducing them. I would like to say every last one of them I know, and 90-something% of them are personal friends of mine. So this is going to be a fantastic day. I am looking at my little brother down there, Mr. Scooter Burton. Wave your hand, Scooter. There he is. Awesome, awesome. He is representing for the Millennials. And then we have Mr. Sylvester Marshall. I'm not sure if he's in the meeting yet, but that is okay. But I do see the beautiful Miss Brittany Dunn.
Hello.
She is in the house. Wonderful. And I also see Miss Kamisha West.
How y'all doing?
Wonderful, wonderful. And then now representing for the Gen Xers, right? The Gen Xers in the house. Two of my fantastic friends, Dr. Marquis Pierre. Dr. Pierre.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. And Dr. Rick Gallo. President
Good morning
Gallo,
from the place
how are
where
you?
everybody is somebody, Grambling State University. Good morning.
Absolutely. So do we have everybody here? If somebody can give me in the chat and just, I know people are loading in, and I am excited that we have been creative enough to figure out a way to have this event in the virtual environment.
There we
right?
go. There we go.
I see somebody else coming in and loading up, so I am going to let them do that, and then we'll get started with our program. I see somebody coming on. We'll see who that is. I have been somewhat enjoying, but also not so much the virtual environment. I am a touchy-feely person, right? So I miss hugging all of you and shaking hands and being, I mean, it's hard being from Louisiana and not being able to hug and embrace people. So that has been very difficult, but I am glad that we have the panel today. I'm going to ask if somebody will just text me. If this is everybody, we will get going with our panel questions and our overview. Let's see if there's anything in the chat. Oh, they're saying, let's go and let's roll. Absolutely. Let's do it. Well, I'm going to give an overview. So the overview of the discussion centers around Gen X and the Millennials. So let's give a definition of Gen X. Generation X is the demographic cohort following the baby boomers and preceding the Millennials. Researchers and popular media use the early to mid 1960s as starting birth years and the late 1970s to the early 80s as ending birth years for the Generation X. So I guess this is a slick way of telling all of the ages of the Generation Xers, right? Mm-hmm. A very, very, very covert way of doing that. Now, the Millennials, also known as Generation Y, are the demographic cohort following Generation X and preceding Generation Z. He's out there. Researchers and popular media use the early 1980s as the starting birth years and the mid 1990s to early 2000s as the ending birth years, with 1981 to 1996 being a widely accepted defining range for the generation. I have clothes that I can still wear from some of these years, the 1996, but I will not talk about that. I see Dr. Theron Jackson in the house. Dr. Jackson, hi and welcome.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. And I see a couple of other avatars that are loading up, and I'm going to give them 1 second to load, and then we are going to be off with our questions. So let's get going. The first question is centered around politics. Should the Black community continue its almost 90% voting loyalty to the Democratic Party? We know that the most recent presidential election, overwhelmingly, African Americans voted Democrat. I'm not sure if that was a testament to the people in office or the party. So let's jump right in. We'll start with you, Dr. Gallo.
Why did I know I'd be the one to get this first question? Well, first of all, I want to thank you.
You've been in the seat, right? You've been
Right.
in the seat.
Right. So, I want to begin by thanking you, Dr. Williams, as well as Lynn Cawthorn and Terrence Vincent, everyone who was responsible for putting this together. I appreciate you all including me. To that first question, I've got some friends in New Orleans who have a saying, you got to be for who for you.
Now.
All right. And so let's start there. I think when you compare the two main parties right now, the Democrats versus the Republicans, who really advocates issues that resonate with the African American community. And so, of course, I don't think any party will ever, well, certainly not for me, no party is ever 100% lined up with everything. But if you've got to make a choice, I think the choice has to be for those who are interested in advancing the issues that are important to you as people. And so I think it's been very clear over at least my lifetime, the fact that the Democratic Party does more align with the values and with the issues that are important to the people that I live around, to the people that I work with, and to the majority of the people that I have had the privilege of representing in my former life as an elected official.
Right. I think you are so correct. And, I think as we continue to look at the issues, we have to be, as you said, the most popular quote is be for who for you, right? So I also see Attorney Felicia Hamilton on the line.
Good morning.
I think I saw you come in and then you disappeared. And I was like, did she leave? So that's why I didn't.
No problem. Gotta love technology. Good morning. Thank you very much. And I also would like to thank Lynn Cawthorn and the various sponsors of State of Black Shreveport for this opportunity to share with you this morning. So I'm just glad to be here on this rainy morning.
Great. Well, I'm going to let you hop in with that question and talk a little bit about politics as we, as we continue to look forward. We just had a presidential election, but as we're thinking forward, should the Black community continue its almost 90% voting loyalty to the Democratic Party?
Well, the first thing is we should vote. Let's start there. We got to get out to vote. So regardless of what that percentage is, a challenge that we have continued to have in the Black community is just getting out to vote. And so like President Gallo stated, it's about, the Democratic Party has primarily kind of aligned with the various ideologies and the value systems that we have grown up with, and they have been the most closely aligned. So in keeping with that, vote for who is for you.
Period. So I got to hop in and get my brother, Dr. Theron Jackson, back in here because I know as a pastor and a faith leader in the community, and also as a person who has been in politics, served as a city councilman, Dr. Jackson, what are your thoughts on this question?
Well, thank you, Dr. Turner. I think I sound like I'm about to sound like I'm piling on, I guess, but some of those friends that Dr. Gallo talked about, I think probably some mutual friends, and I think the real formula is be for who for you. And I think so often we've done so much and gotten so little so regularly that we start to lower our expectations, quite frankly. But I do think that we have to be wiser, knowing that in fact, that may, sometimes cost us some affection of some people who are just cheerleaders for one party. At the end of the day, I think we can't afford to do that at this point. We got to make sure that whoever delivers is delivering what we need, notwithstanding what their stripe is. As you know, as time has evolved, politics has gotten more nationalized, and when it has gotten more nationalized versus localized, then we have found ourselves playing partisan politics more and a divisive brand of partisan politics, quite frankly. Where there was a time in the state of Louisiana just a mere 30 years ago, 20 years at least, maybe 30 years ago, where it was about where you were from geographically, not necessarily what party you were in. And I think that the poison of partisanship is happening. And the problem is that you can see it now at a city council, you can see it now at a parish commission. And that's when I think politics has devolved into a pitiful place when party matters even on the local level. So I think whatever we do to return back to interests, whether it is geographical interests and for us self-interest, that our decisions ought to reflect those interests.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to get the millennial perspective in here, and I'm going to start with you, Scooter. I know you've been so vocal, you've been active. Your dad has been, very active, and he was a legend in the community. But I also want to add another piece to this question for our millennials who are on the panel. So the question now is, should the Black community continue its almost 90% voting loyalty to the Democratic Party? And do you think millennials have a different perspective of where how that loyalty should lie?
Good morning, first of all, and good morning to you, Dr. Tucker, of course. To answer your first question, I want to say that I agree with Dr. Rick wholeheartedly that we got to vote for who is for us. The second part of that, I would also say that we have not had a party that was for us since maybe the Black Panther Party that cared about us. And this is in no way, in endorsement of shining a big torch for the Black Panther Party. I'm just saying we hadn't had a party that was for us, that was Black people first, the concerns and the plight of Black people first. Of course, the Democratic Party have, since JFK, since we got him elected way back when, we've kind of leaned towards more Democratic. We've been more Democratic just because they've aligned more with our issues or have seemed to align more with our issues. And I think that is where the problem lies with the millennials, is that we're tending to, see through that, but not only see through that, but want radical change very fast. And I think we have come to the conclusion that most of the people that are in the two-party system, they're not going to bring about that change that we so desperately seek and so desperately fight and walk in the streets for, like our ancestors did, like the people that came before us did. But I don't think we're as patient, or we're ready for it now. So when you say, are the millennials, still with that two-party system thing, I still in agreement with some of the things that the Democratic Party are doing and are trying to champion. No, we're not. I think the millennials as a whole are looking for something new, something different, something more us. And I think that's why you're seeing a big change nationwide in politics.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to get you in here, Kamisha West. Hop in. Give us your thoughts.
Okay, my thoughts on this, as a registered independent, I would definitely say, when we go for radical change, we're looking for people who are going to align with our values as millennials, and that's not always um, what we've been accustomed to, or how we've been raised, or how we've been told to vote historically in the Black community. And so I'm all about reaching across the aisle. If it's a Republican or a Democrat, who's ever going to get me closer to helping me reaching my goals for community, as well as initiatives that I'm for. And I feel like millennials across the nation are saying that we need everybody, because sometimes when we just lean on the Democratic Party, we've seen that sometimes they don't always come through. And sometimes the Republican Party in this two-party system don't always come through. So who's going to be for us on the issues that we're for? And if they're standing and fighting with us, sometimes it's not about loyalty. Sometimes it's just about who's able to get legislation done, who's going to champion that voice for us. And whoever it may be on either party side, we're willing to listen and go to them to champion our cause, and not just rely historically on, our predecessors and what they've done and how they've championed change. Because this is a new century. So for radical change, it takes radical action, and sometimes you have to go outside of party lines to get people to come together. So I think in that regard, we're open-minded in politics.
Yeah, thank you, Kamisha. I appreciate that. I'm gonna add another layer to the question and get the thoughts of Marquis and Brittany in here. And so with all of that, all of the information that we've heard from your colleagues on the panel, do you think that, well, let me just phrase it like this. What policies do you think are aligned mostly with your generation? So we know that, or concerns, or, what for your generation, what policies are most important? And we'll start with you, Dr. Markey.
Good morning, Dr. Turner, and thank you for, or Williams, excuse me. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. Thank you, Lynn, for having this dialogue. I think it's really important. I think what we've heard is, a great deal of discouragement with the polarizing, partisan, pitiful politics that we've seen in this last few years. And it's really brought to the forefront voices that have not been elevated enough. I think that one of the challenges we have, especially in the Black community, whether you are a Generation Xer or a millennial, is how do we elevate our voices for those major issues that are of concern to our community, whether it's safety, healthcare, being able to ensure that we have informed, appropriate education for our children. Those are the things I think relative to the Gen Xers. Now, I can't speak for everybody, but I know that those are the three top major issues that I have. Economic independence is extremely important, but how do we elevate our voices and demand that seat at the table, regardless which party we're at, to ensure that those issues are elevated far enough so that we can mobilize and push those common goals that we have.
Yeah, Brittany.
Yes, ma'am. I think that for me, economic development is the most important. I think that our communities, African American communities, have very unique needs. And I don't think that, just going back to the previous question as well about the 90% of the voting, I don't think that the Republicans quite understand the challenges that African Americans experience just on a day-to-day basis. I still feel like there's a gap. I think that whenever we talk about equity and equality, I think that sometimes Republicans think that we are all equal, but they don't consider the fact that we didn't start in the same place. I think that Democrats sometimes, I feel like they understand that we kind of started with these challenges. And even if we go back and look at the different bills that were passed for as economic development and helping Black businesses, you see a difference that's rolling out now, and the Democrats are considering the fact that some of these challenges hindered African American businesses from getting funding, and so they've tried to come in and readjust that and fix those challenges. So I definitely agree with the others who said that we do have to vote for who is for us, and I do feel like Democrats consider our needs and our challenges and where we started.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So now,
Dr. Williams, could I
yeah,
jump in for
ab-
just 1 second and follow up on
absolutely.
something that Dr. Jackson said? And I think Georgia serves as a great example of what can happen when you look at what Stacey Abrams was able to do in terms of mobilizing the voices of the people to get out and vote and elect 2 senators who do reflect the issues of the majority of Georgia. And so, but it has to start at the local level. It's got to start in the home
Mhm.
and spread to the street, to the neighborhood, to the town, to the parish, to the entire state. But it's going to have to start that shift, that change will have to begin in the home and spread out. The other thing is that there has to be an interaction that continues to take place. I think one part of the what has disappointed people with their politicians or their elected officials is that they elect them and they forget about them until the next election.
Mhm.
And Dr. Pierre, I know can speak to this. How many people actually show up in the committee rooms to speak for or against bills that restrict voting rights, for instance? It has to be this has to be an ongoing event. This has to be a relationship that continues to cultivate and grow both ways. So I want to encourage everyone, regardless of what your generation is that you got to keep your eye on what's going on and stay engaged and let the politicians know what you're thinking, not just at election time, but throughout the cycle.
And
Dr.
so,
Gallo, let me just can I just jump right in there because he made such a valid point. When
mhm.
we start talking about engaging in politics, it does have to begin at home. It has to begin with a conversation with your kids at a young age. It has to begin with a conversation with your aunts, with your uncles to discuss this. And then you share it, you build a community of issues, and it goes outside of the home to the church. And so it's really important that we have these conversations and that we educate ourselves in our own homes to have that to begin that dialogue and then spread it out so that we're just not, the first time we hear about this is we're visiting from a school trip, to the Capitol, and we're like, oh, wow, I didn't know we did all of that. We've got to do a better job of educating ourselves and our children.
And not to sound like the amen corner, but I certainly agree. And I think this is while this particular activity, this event today is so important because as we talk about, we need to talk about bridging the gap. And a lot of times those gaps are by way of generational differences.
Absolutely.
And so the fact that you have members of Generation X and you have millennials on the line, it's not just about a conversation today. It's not just about the election that comes up on XYZ date. These have to be continuous. We have to continue to engage, but also understanding and respecting each other's differences. Once you understand how we learn, how we grow, how we accept matters between the various generations, then we can communicate and can move forward together because I have an understanding of how you embrace information and how information, how it may be received as a Generation Xer is different from the immediate and we want something to happen now from the millennial viewpoint. But we have to find that middle ground so that we can move together because without us being together, things will continue as they have been, a divide.
So let me ask you this, and Dr. Gallo brings up again, I'm gonna just amen the amens, a phenomenal point about staying engaged, but it can be overwhelming. I mean, if you follow the bills and the legislation and the stuff that people are proposing, I mean, how does one do that? And I mean, I've read bills that I felt like I needed a whole nother degree just to understand what the people were trying to say. So how do these families stay involved and stay engaged at the beginning so that when the junk comes up that affects the Black community, when the negative policies are lifted, when they lift their ugly heads, and then all of a sudden it's on the news and now we're trying to march and fight, how do we stay engaged at the beginning, and what are some tips for families and parents and aunts and uncles and Gen Xers and millennials and everybody to be informed?
You can get to the legislative website just as quickly as you could get to Twitter, to Instagram, to Snapchat, and fans only or only fans or whatever it is, all the stuff that's out there. You can
Oh
get
my.
to it just as quickly. Every information's at your fingertips. You can watch every single committee meeting that takes place at the Capitol. You can follow each and every legislative instrument that's going through the process. So there's no excuse in terms of being able to access. If you've got a phone and you can get to Twitter and Instagram, you can get to the legislature.
Mm-hmm. And what is that site? Share it with everybody so that everybody knows that site.
Okay, it's legis, legis.la.gov.gov.
But Melva, I want to jump in on this because that's at the state level, and we all realize and recognize that all politics are local. And so it's some issue that's in your local community that spurs that a bill usually is filed. And so, being engaged at the local level and at home and talking to your local elected officials and actually having dialogue with them, going out and having fun and saying hello and taking a picture is nice. But if you've got concerns relative to what's going on in education, take some time to sit down with that particular individual and talk about your concerns. Find out what they're planning to do, what local legislation are they looking at, and how can you be engaged and how can you share the information? We've just gotten away from it because we've gotten sick of it. We've gotten frustrated with the process. And when we become sick and frustrated, either we decide that we're not going to participate, or we get angry enough that we're going to engage. And I think that we're at the point that we're angry enough that it's time to re-engage once again and to bring everybody back together.
Yep.
Okay. And just one more point. And as you stated, yes, it is. It's about local, and the beauty, if I use the word beauty of the past year, everything is virtual. Everything is virtual. There was a time when you may not be able to make a city council meeting or commission meeting because you couldn't leave your job at 3:00 or whatever time to go down to to those actual meetings,
or drive to Baton Rouge to do
absolutely. But now they're online, and just I don't know all of the social media platforms, but I do know Facebook. I know the parish of Caddo has that present. They're there weekly. The city council meeting weekly, it's online, and so it's like you can there, and then you're even able to with just like Facebook Live, make comments. So you can certainly engage and you can be a part of it without having to leave the comfort of your home, but you have to have the desire to want to know. That's the challenge.
Yeah. Okay, so I got to shift gears, and I want to shift quickly before Dr. Jackson. I know he has to get off for a funeral. Dr. Jackson, are you still with us there? Dr. Jackson, are you there? Well, I wanted him to open up about the religious segment on this panel, but if he is not, then I will skip down to communications. And if he does pop back on, we'll grab him. But in a workplace environment, and this is very interesting. All of you, I'm looking at most of these faces, business owners, professionals in the community, higher ed. A spectrum of individuals. So in a workplace environment, What is your preferred way of addressing work-related issues with coworkers? Is it texting, email, telephone conversation, or face-to-face, and why? That's one of our questions from our community.
Okay, I can jump in on that one. As a millennial, being in management, my background is in retail management, and I work for a Fortune 500 company for almost a decade. And I can tell you, as a millennial, managing people that was 10 years to 20 years older than me, communication varies based on who you're talking to and how you want them to respond. I've primarily found that, you know, Gen Xers and baby boomers, they like you to talk to them in person. They want you that one-on-one conversation. They want that personal conversation because it builds trust with them. And what I've seen from the younger generations, millennials to Gen Zs, they'll prefer texting. They're open to, you know, the technology communication, and it doesn't have to be that direct presence. But what I will say, because, you know, we are in the technology age, technology is so important for all generations, and how we bridge that is continuously to teach, you know, other generations how we prefer to communicate. And we've seen through COVID-19 that virtual, you know, is possible. A lot of people were saying, you know, they didn't want somebody to text them on the phone, or they did want that phone call, that they did want that in-person visit. But we seen quickly that, you know, a text or a phone call, you know, would get things done faster than trying to meet with someone. And I will also say that, you know, the way or preference for communication does not necessarily mean professionalism, because there's different ways to communicate to people and still be professional. I think it's about personal choice and preference, though, you know, what you prefer. But sometimes you got to get over what you prefer, you know, to meet the demands of the people, and the people that who may be your customers, or maybe your business partners, or whatever goal you're trying to achieve. You have to meet them where they are. And right now we're in this technology wave where technology is saying, hey, if I can't meet you, and if I'm on a call with somebody else, maybe I have to text you. Or if I'm in a business meeting with somebody, I can multitask and do all the things, you know, and get that done that way.
Well, Kamisha, I did all of the things, and that's why Dr. Jackson is back with us. I text him. It's like, where are you? Come on back. But he is multitasking. He is being a millennial Gen Z YXP as he is managing a very busy and unexpected day. But I do want to toss this question to him before he has to go to a funeral of a dear friend of ours. So I'll start here. We'll come back to that. And you did a fantastic job with that. I can't wait to get back into it. The Bible teaches us that in latter days, there will be a mass falling away from the church. What do you think is causing this modern day decline in church attendance among younger generations in particular, and all generations in general?
Well, I think, Dr. Williams, that there's a few things that we have to place some context in that. Of course, when that scripture was written, it's been over 2,000 plus years ago when that scripture was written, and everybody who has come over the course of the last 2,000 years have felt they lived in the latter days. And so that's not new for this generation. Every generation has experienced a similar thing. That phenomenon is not new, but we contextualize it to where we are right now. I'll say to you that the falling away, sometimes it's multifaceted. I think the key, though, for the church, for the perpetuity of the church and for the church's posterity, the key is to be sure that we continue being serious about the mission. So much has become so personality driven. It's about the people who are in the church rather than the people who the church is here to serve. We are the only membership-based institution who is designed for the benefit of its non-members. We should, in fact, not forget that. I think a lot of what disdain is a lot of people, when it becomes personality driven, then you got to like people, and then you don't like them. But when love remains the ethic, then it doesn't matter who folks are and how folks are, because you're doing it for different reasons. So I think a part of what happens is that the church has become such an institution that it stopped being a movement. It was created to be a movement, not an institution. I think when we get back to being a movement, people join movements, they move along with movements. Institutions turn people off, quite frankly, because of the long-term type of life commitments folks feel like they have to make. Movements, it galvanize people because they feel like we're getting something done. The very nature of movement is to do something. And so I think as the church makes herself investable again, meaning worthy of people's time, talent, and treasure, then people will come back. I mean, it's a real simple issue. Businesses do the same thing all the time. If the church were a business, and many of them run just like a business, they'd be out of business. And I think that's the phenomenon you see. I think we have to be sure we remain investable by staying committed to our mission. And I think if we are mission driven and we remain a movement, we'll attract the right people who are interested in doing the right things.
Right. Scooter, tell us, with your generation, how have you seen, or what are your thoughts on the decline in church attendance by the younger generation? Or is it even happening? Or is everybody just streaming faith?
I totally agree with Dr. Jackson that it has to the church has to get back to being a movement. A lot of millennials, most millennials, we are very, very into the new age of things. So I think churches have kind of tried to, conform somewhat to that with, bigger stage lights, just all around production. So when you make church a production, you have to keep that up, so and sometimes a millennial or anybody, a member, will start coming for that production instead of for God or what it's supposed to be about. So a lot of times we look at the pastor and we make him God, and pastors are human. They're people. They might be people that we come to in the time of need or in the time of struggle, or we dealing with faith-based issues. But pastors are human too. They make mistakes too. And I think a lot of times we look at pastors as being, God or Jesus Jr. when they are not. They're just regular people. So, once we've got to, as a people, we've got to really, 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 look to God and not our man of God. We got to, honor our man of God and thank our man of God for taking him away from his life to pour into ours. But at the same step, we've got to look past the man in the pulpit and look past the man that we're supposed to be coming for, which is not a man at all, which is God. So that would be my first point on that. And the second thing would be, millennials do a lot of reading now, or a lot of investigation and a lot of researching and a lot of, it's just a whole lot of other things that come into play when you talk about why millennials are not going to church as much as they used to. But I will say this, that the online attendance as far as church is astronomical in some places. There's a guy by the name of Mike Todd that's in Tulsa, Oklahoma. When I tell you he has almost 100,000 some people online viewing him every Sunday. I've actually logged on Morningstar and watched Pastor Jackson a couple times. Over 500,000 people on there online watching church. So I think that the more the church kind of marries technology with it, and I think not to say the pandemic helped the church, but the pandemic did make the church realize that social media is a very, very poignant thing to have when you're trying to spread the gospel.
Yeah. And I do want to hop in here, and you bring up a great point and a great question to segue. How has the global pandemic maybe changed the way you have participated in worship service? And do you think it has changed forever? And I'll just toss that to anybody. I kind of want to start with Brittany, though.
Okay. Hello.
Hey, there you are.
Okay. We were already attending a church that had a lot of virtual experiences and already had a lot of dealt with electronic communication and things like that. So for us, it hasn't really changed our experience. It has allowed us to be more available and be able to join church service with us having busy schedules and things like that. So it's gave us the opportunity to be available, and even as we're around the house, we're able to put on our headphones and be able to enjoy worship. And in times past, we have had times to where we weren't able to make it in. So I think for us, it's gave us the opportunity to be able to attend and get that weekly worship service that we needed. So it's been a great experience for us.
Yeah. So, Dr. Jackson, I am a member of Morning Star, and I watch the 8 o'clock service, and I was always kind of, one of the lead members of Bedside Baptist of the church and the Pillar Missionary, and logging in. And we were fortunate enough at our church at Morning Star that we had that presence prior to COVID. But I have my burning question. I just have to know this. How is it preaching to a box? I mean, the Black church is so part of what I enjoy about the Black church is somebody might take a lap. Somebody might, it's the full experience of the worship, because Black people are so dynamic. So how is it for a pastor to maybe not have that interaction, and maybe just talk about how you approached it?
Yeah, a lot of it is culture, as you just described, but I want to be sure that there's two sides to this coin. The first is that we have to embrace, as I think of Scooter maybe or someone saying, we embrace the fact that this was happening already. I mean, we've been streaming for probably 8 or 10 years, right? So it didn't take us any time to create this, but what did change is that there are a lot of folks who didn't engage the church, say, financially online through those kind of different platforms. And so that was another thing. So there are some dynamics to it. But when it comes to the actual worship, one of the things that I'm excited about is that it can reach more people. That's true. But what bothers me is this twofold element. One, that people divide their attention. Well, I can go and do this and do that. Where it's not a whole person experience where this person is fully attentive to whatever is going on. So I think that's one of the issues that I am concerned about. But the other is that the Black church experience has historically, and what you were describing to a great degree, has been a cathartic experience as well. And when you miss that cathartic experience, it was that place where folks who had been oppressed and suppressed could come and open their mouths, and they holler, they say something, they talk back. It's almost like a relief of stress, quite frankly, in many ways. And everybody who was hollering wasn't hollering about the grace of God and the goodness of God. Some people have been catching hell all week, and they just came to let something out, and it was a good cathartic environment where they weren't going to be judged for taking that lap, right? Because right. Get on my nerves at home. Something's going on, but there was a place to exercise that level of catharsis. But that doesn't happen in other places, and it's a unique space for that. My concern is for the emotional health of our people when you take that away. We dealt publicly with grief. We've taken that away. We've dealt publicly with these things that sometimes would get us down. We had people to lean on, and we were always people who dealt publicly with our grief. We have unique funerals, all of those kind of things. But those were public ways that we dealt with our pain. And when you take away the space where public pain is dealt with, then you got to wonder what's happening in these private spaces.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, okay. That is, I had to get the scoop. Is there any, I had to get the scoop because it was so interesting to just, imagine how is, especially the last question. And I know we have to go, and they're texting me saying we need to get to part 2 and get some other panelists in here. But I do want to know, how have you seen how the elderly, I know a lot of older people support the church. I mean, they attend, they're there. That is their experience. They're retired. This is their opportunity to engage. They're looking forward to Wednesday and Thursday and, Sundays. So how have, pastors in your network and ecosystem been able to engage our older citizens with?
Yeah, it has to be intentional. We have people who visit everyone. We have about 120 people who are over the age of 70 who we saw on a regular basis. We now have to do it in a different way, and so we take care packages and do different things. But as it relates to them interacting, they're not native to this technology like these millennials may be. This is still a foreign approach to them, and so conference calls, doing things during the week, not just on Sunday. They've been as faithful as they possibly can be, given whatever their technological limits may have been. It's amazing that they will still get in the car, ride up to the church just to say hello on a Tuesday afternoon, just to see somebody, kind of a thing,
Yeah.
to the extent that they can do so carefully. And we have to be sensitive to that. And so we tried to find ways to get to them in ways that we possibly could, because it's going to be a longer move for them getting into this notion of technology. Quite frankly, some will not. So we have to be non-traditional yet intentional about how we get to them and create one-on-one relationships with them that we think to still be valuable in times like this.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Gallo. Thank you, Marquis Pierre. Thank you, Felicia Hamilton. Thank you, Brittany Dunn and Kamisha West and Scooter Burton for your presence today. You all were phenomenal. Dr. Jackson as well. Thank you so much. We also want to just take a moment, a fantastic first group of panelists. I also just want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. We have Cawthorn Financial Group, Washington and Wells, attorneys at law, right? Redwood Property Management, McDonald's, and I think that, yes, Griggs Enterprises, my good friends, and Doran and Cawthorn LLC. I think that, yes, attorneys at law. Thank you so much to our sponsors for supporting this fantastic event. We hope that you are watching us on and sharing. We want you to share this post. If you're watching us, we want you to share on your Facebook pages, what's going on, and get more people to watch. And then after this is over, please continue to share and like and repost our event today. So we're going to get our next panel back in and continue our questions. And I also encourage you, for the sake of time, these bios of our panelists are extensive. These people are phenomenal. So I'm going to just tell you like this: Google them, okay? Because they are they are phenomenal. So make sure that you are looking them up, following them all on social media. Follow what they're doing, because they are doing phenomenal things, and make sure you're also supporting what they're doing, because they are fantastic contributors to the Shreveport community. All right. Do we have some more panelists coming in the room? Ooh, I see some new and great faces. All right. All right, we have Dr. Theron Jackson is still here. We have Scooter is still with us. Kamisha still with us. Marquis is still here. But we got some new faces to the panel. We have my good friend, attorney Alex Washington. Hello there.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Welcome,
Been a long time.
welcome. Happy Saturday. I'm sending a virtual hug.
I'll take it.
And my good sister down there at the bottom of the screen, Miss Omari Hosang. Hi, honey.
Hey, good morning, Dr. Williams.
Good morning. Good morning. And my buddy, We are always in a lot of meetings together. Mr. Sylvester Marshall, how are you today? Oh, he's still on mute. He's still on mute. He's gonna unmute himself and get himself.
I
There.
said, hey, good to see you, even on a Saturday.
Yes, even on a Saturday. It's fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'm gonna just do a final check to make sure we got everybody, and we will get rolling with more questions. We've had if you're just now joining us, let me say this: you are in for a treat. You're in for a robust conversation with some phenomenal leaders. As I said during our break, we don't have time to introduce everybody because and read their bios, because we would be on this call and on the Zoom and on the virtual environment for about another hour just reading all of their accomplishments. So I am going to ask for you to please follow them, look them up, follow them on Facebook, Instagram. I'm sure Marquis and all of the Gen Xers are on TikTok. So follow them on TikTok. Pastor Jackson, they're all, Rick Gallo, they're probably all on TikTok doing challenges and stuff. So make sure you're following them on all of the social media platforms. And I see Dr. Terrence Vincent, my good colleague and friend, Dr. Terrence Vincent just joined us. Hello, Dr. Vincent, and welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, all.
Good morning. A little bit of this and a little bit of that and a lot of information. Okay, that is what is going on today. So I'm going to give us, just for those of you that are just joining us, here is an overview of our panelists. We have Generation X and the Millennials in the house. So Generation X is the demographic cohort followed by the baby boomers, preceding the Millennials, and researchers and popular media use early to mid 1960s to the early 1980s as the ending birth year. So we're just ratting out their ages for the Generation Xers, and all of the Gen Xers were, I can confirm, I think they were all born in 1980. So there we go, done. Covered it for everybody. What'd you say, Marquis?
I'm gonna go with that.
Yes. Right on. Yes. All 80. We didn't, weren't able to get any of the 70s and the 60s. All 80s. Okay. And then the Millennials, also known as Generation Y, are the demographic cohort following Generation X and preceding Generation Z. Yes, there is a Z, my people. Yes. And the popular birth years for this generation is the mid 90s to the early 2000s. So yes, as I said earlier, I still have clothes that I am wearing from when these people were born. Okay. So all good. All good. Let's get on with some of the questions. We talked a little bit about politics earlier, and we are going to go back to politics because I see so many people who are actively engaged in our community. And well, this question is not, it's a little bit about politics, but it can go either way. But when a white person responds, all lives matter, when they hear Black Lives Matter, in your opinion, is this a deflection? Race? Is this a deflection? Is this person racist, or is this just an uninformed statement? And why? I'm going straight to you, my millennial sister Omari. What are your thoughts?
Well, honestly, I think it's all three. It's most certainly a deflection. And when I think about the All Lives Matter deflection, I also think about when police brutality is being talked about, then you have folks who come in talking about, well, what about Black on Black crime? So I think it's important that, well, number one, there's a couple of things here. Number one, us as Black folk, it is not our job to educate white people about racism. And sometimes I feel that it is sadistic almost for white folks to pretend as if racism does not exist and to pretend that they do not understand what the statement Black Lives Matter means. But the second piece is we have to understand and educate our community against this somewhat dominant narrative, right? We have to educate folks on the transformational narrative of understanding that Black lives do matter. And the reason why we have to make this statement is because when you look in society, when you look at our educational institutions, when you look at our economic institutions, when you look at local, state, and national government, many times policies reflect that Black lives don't matter. But I also want to kind of bring in a piece that I reflected upon when listening to the first panel, is that we have to hold, if Black Lives Matter, right? We have to hold our Black leadership accountable for really showing and proving that Black lives matter, not only in policy, but in the way that we operate within our institutions. And so when it comes to white folks, I think racism will always rear its ugly head no matter what. And I think that we have to pick and choose how we want to labor around that, because we understand what it means when we say Black Lives Matter. But I think the real labor in the work is not proving to these All Lives Matter folks that Black Lives Matter. The real labor in the work is uplifting our institutions, uplifting movements that prove that Black Lives Matter, pushing policies that reflect that, and being kind to one another and pushing out Black elitism and classism within our Black communities.
Yeah. Alex, hop in. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was all loaded and ready to go on your question about the 90% of us voting for policy over party. And you just changed the script. But let me give you my thoughts on it.
Sometimes, periodically, I flip.
I know. Well, I mean, whether or not it's a deflection or they're uninformed, I think it's a little bit of both. With being deflection, I've been involved in protests and marches and across the country. One out in San Antonio, and just kind of communicating with the people there. A lot was Hispanic. You had some whites who were supporting the protest, and a lot of them are just uninformed. They lived in their community. They live in their little kingdom, not understanding that the way our people develop, even the people in this room, how we develop. You know, I come from a poor family, and I had to, nothing was handed out to me. I had to work hard, and I'm sure everybody here had to work hard to get to where we are. And we had a lot of obstacles. We have police issues in our communities. We have individuals who didn't want to hire us. I mean, as an attorney, white firms didn't want to hire me. When I was in college, I had to get a job at a Circle K as opposed to having a job at a desk. I had to work long hours. We all have that same story, but for our counterparts who been sitting on inheritance for over 100 years, for the most part, at least 75% had the easy way. And even when you don't have the easy way, because you're white, you always have an option, and they always give you that opportunity. Mm-hmm. So they don't understand when we say voice our concerns, and like Ms. Pierre said earlier, elevate our concerns on a national level, where when they continue to kill all the Black men in the streets, and now killing out some of our Black women in their homes, and our voice elevated because we were tired, and they start screaming, all lives matter. For the most part, probably 80% of those are people who don't give a damn about Black people anyway. But I would say there's always about 20% or 25% of the people that understand who God is, understand what love is, and is compassionate, and sometimes get caught up with their white for people in their community saying all lives matter. But some of them are compassionate for what we need. So what we need to do is understand that there is some deflection, but also understand that there are some people on our team, and if we can bring that 20% with the numbers that we have in this country, then we can become the majority of a ideology, a thought process that supports our agenda. And I say that part for the agenda whenever you get back to the 90% policy of a party.
He's like, we have to talk about this. Okay, we are going back. We are going back, but right after
Okay.
this, right after this question.
Dr. Williams, can I
So,
say something on that too?
yeah,
On
yes,
the
go
All Lives
absolutely.
Matter question.
Yes, yeah.
I'm not gonna give white folks that say all lives matter a pass by saying they are unlearned, don't know, or anything like that. Because if you know enough to hear Black Lives Matter and then say all lives matter, then you know. To me, that is a direct statement to tear down, break apart, and make this whole thing about all lives matter. Well, we already know that. All lives, y'all lives have mattered since the beginning of time. Let's get this straight. White folks know tragedy. They know hurt. They know pain. They remember their tragedy, their pain, and their hurt. On September 11th, every year, what happens? On your social media, everything goes up. We will never forget all this. Never forget September 11th. And I agree with that. Never forget all those lives that were lost on September 11th. Tragedy, tragic, wholeheartedly. But do we go and say all buildings matter? No, we do not. We remember September the 11th. Yeah, we know that your life matter, your life matter, your life matter. But when you fix your mouth to say all lives matter, that is the direct difference from saying Black lives matter. You're trying to make a general statement and take the focus off of what we're really talking about. And they've done that for years. So I'm not gonna give white folks a pass when they say all lives matter. They know what they're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna add to that question, and I'm seeing it. I'm seeing an approach, and I want to go into this as an intergenerational conversation. What do you feel is the disconnect, or do you feel that there's a disconnect between Generation Y and Generation X relative to addressing racial issues that are permeating across America? And I'm gonna start with you, Terrence Vincent, and then go to Sylvester.
Okay. Good morning again, everyone. Great to have an opportunity to speak. That's interesting that you asked that question. I just had a pretty spirited debate the other night surrounding this, and I think there is somewhat a disconnect. Going back to the question of voting 90% Democrat, there is a disconnect. I think some of the information and knowledge, experience hadn't been passed down. For example, the baby boomers didn't really share a lot of those experiences. We gained it through TV or school. And I think some of it is because they may have wanted to suppress some of the feelings they had surrounding maybe whites. And so I think maybe just the thinking of engagement, of working together. For an example, the millennial generation may feel that, hey, reaching across the aisle is the appropriate or right thing to do in regards to philosophy. To say, let's just be honest, some of the social issues that we're going through. For an example, college debt. Some millennials figure college should be free. Well, in our generation, it just wasn't that way. You got a student loan, you kind of paid it back, and things of that nature. So those are some of the maybe not disconnects, but just thinking or the things that whereby the thinking or the process of the way we think are different. And many of those issues are social issues that we're encountering. For an example, all lives matter and things like that. Marching doesn't work anymore. That may be a thought process of the millennials. So they want action fast, and they want it today.
Yeah. Sylvester, what are your thoughts in combining all of these questions and what you've heard with all lives matter, Black lives matter? And we're just about to dovetail into, we're going back to our first question, but do you feel that there is a disconnect between Gen Y and Gen X as we address racial issues?
I do. And kind of going back into the first question when we were talking about all lives matter, we can't let them change the narrative of Black Lives Matter like they are, and some people are trying to do. Even I'm even noticing Black people are changing the narrative and going along with it when they say, well, we may see somebody get shot last night, and they say, well, what about Black Lives Matter? You know, I see that in the comment section or whatever, and I see some Black people falling into that. Yes, we have issues within our community when it comes to crime and against each other. But I'm a firm believer that whole thing about black on black crime is a myth. Everybody has crime against the people you live around, the people you in your economic class. It's so many other factors in that. But the narrative of black on black crime is pushed, and I see that a deflection from all lives matter is every time something happens within our community, that same group is yelling, well, what about, I thought all lives matter, as another way to deflect from the conversation of police brutality and just generations of mistrust and all sorts of things in the community. The disrespect, I think, between the two generations, I think the main thing is that respect. Our generation, I see people have these T-shirts and these sayings. I'm not my ancestors. You know, I'm not my past generations. We'll hit you back. Well, that just shows a lack of education and a lack of history. Our people have always fought back. Our people have always stood up, and regardless of what the situation was. So I think from our generation, we need to give a history lesson and educate ourselves on what our past generations have done, because that's offensive in itself to say I'm not my ancestors because I'll do X, Y, Z. You know, you dig into it, our ancestors did more than what I see a lot of us doing now.
Oh, wow.
And then going back on that also, what we have to realize in our generation is activism is this broad thing. My activism may not look like your activism. Just you may be the marcher, I may be the donor or the supporter, or this person may be the educator and the teacher. We get so riled up over who's not doing what and who's doing what. But you have to form a team, and everybody has a responsibility on that team to do various things. So I think once we actually show that and show a united front on certain issues and things like that, then we can move forward and then show a more unified front through our generations and each other.
Yeah.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
I want to jump in on that conversation because I think Sylvester said something that is so important, especially as a millennial. And for me as a millennial, growing up and watching my mom help to build coalition in the community and be a part of the social movement of a church, whether that was putting out signs for a political candidate or, you know, busing kids to the after school program, I just learned so much. But at the same time, as a millennial, we can't get tired of doing the work. We can't get tired of doing the work that we've seen our ancestors do, whether that's educating or, you know, being out there actively and contributing in any kind of way. We just can't get tired of doing the work. We're in this so-called woke movement that generation millennials, we say we're so woke, but how woke are we really, truly? If we get tired of actually doing the work. And the last part of what I want to say is, because, you know, information and technology is so rampant, we cannot give people an excuse, you know, to deflect. You know, once I educate you and there's so much information out there and you still choose to turn a blind eye, we have to move forward at that point. We just, you know, it's just so overwhelming sometimes to keep educating people once you've already done it. And I think there's so many platforms that people can be woke on and do their research and try to gain a better understanding that they can connect with us better and, you know, see our plight.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go back to
that, Melva, real quick, because I think that everybody's made some really good comments, and you know, I just want to put a few things just into context from my perspective. When you look at Black Lives Matter, and remember, Black Lives Matter started back in 2013 after the acquittal of George Zimmerman after the Trayvon Martin murder. And it was a movement. It was a movement to bring people together, to bring Black people together, to coalesce us around an issue that was extremely important, that had begun to make waves all across the country. And when we look at that as a movement, white people saw, I'm sorry, it was the Caucasian group that saw that this was a movement. And then they created what I'm calling a parody. And they use that parody to deflect us, honestly. And I think it's very important that we recognize that we have to stay focused on the movement that's at hand and not allow ourselves to be deflected when we start talking about being engaged, being informed, being educated. Communication has absolutely been a challenge, not just for the millennials and for the Gen Xers, but if you go back to the baby boomers, we've got some systemic problems when it comes to communicating and sharing information, because we have this problem with sharing information that's hurtful to us. And we have got to be able to come out of these dark places if we're ever going to break those systemic challenges and chains that we have to share information so that we can all heal and begin to move forward around issues that are important to our own communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Dr. Williams, excuse me if I may.
Yes.
One important, because I want to try to talk about this conceptually also in regards to Shreveport, because again, this is the state of Black Shreveport. And I think I want to try to put a little twist on this, because obviously some folks may know, depending on where you're viewing from, I sit on the Caddo Parish School Board. And I don't want to say this is a millennial thinking, but I want to get us to thinking about this, or to get our juices to flowing in this regard. Let's talk about the neighborhood school versus sending our child to another school just outside of our neighborhood. We have to remain engaged, because that's also a part of what we have to do if we're going to talk about millennial versus Gen X, or coming together as a Black community. We have to support our own, not only from an economic standpoint, from an education standpoint. And so if Black Lives Matter, then I think we need to not only stay engaged, but also ensure that we're supporting some of our neighborhood businesses, our educational institutions, Southern University, Shreveport, and some of our neighborhood schools. So it's important that we understand ourselves that value is within our neighborhoods or within our institutions. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out, maybe to get our juices flowing a little bit more. In addition to that, in conclusion, I'll say that we haven't done a good job of passing the baton. As Dr. Pierre just mentioned, we have to ensure that we're passing on not only the stories, but the intellectual capital and opportunities in our city, both economically, educationally, and close those gaps and create those linkages.
Yeah. And so to your point, it's a perfect segue into my next question. This is Black History Month, and we're saluting pioneering Blacks of all human areas of human pursuit. And quite often in business and as a community, we have not always supported Black-owned businesses to the extent that we should. How do we change this phenomenon? And what are the best practices should business owners be encouraged to implement to get greater support? And we have a lot of business owners on this panel today, so I definitely want to hear your perspective on this. And we'll start with you, Brittany Dunn. If you're is Brittany still there? Well, then we'll go to anybody who's up as we talk about supporting Black businesses.
I'll jump in
Alex,
on that.
I know you're on the Black. Yeah, please hop on in there.
Yeah. Sometimes I think when it comes to anything Black, sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. Even going back on the previous question when we were talking about the word Black has come with such a negative connotation placed on it, because even like we say Black Lives Matter, you get pushback. Every year we've been doing, Mr. Lynn's been doing State of Black Shreveport, I think for 9 years now. As soon as it comes up in the comment section or KTBS or who else posts State of Black Shreveport, they see Black, they go crazy. It's crazy comments in the comment section. What's the State of Black Shreveport? What about our Shreveport? But going into business, as soon as we see Black business, we automatically put our guards up. We automatically go into a thing of like less expectations. And I want the best for less. And I want so much without giving so much back. And then we don't give each other chances. And it's hard being a Black business owner because you rarely get second chances. To impress people and to wow people, because that one time we ready to go versus we've all been to pretty much every business there is out there, and we know we don't get A1 service at Walmart. We don't care who the owner of Walmart is. We don't get A1 treatment at Burger King, Southern Classic, a lot of places we go and support. Even some of these churches that don't have African American pastors, we don't get the best treatment at, but yet we still give our all to them with little to no criticism. So I think we have to have patience, because if somebody's a new business, it's going to take them a while to ramp up. It's going to take them a while and you don't have to bash them. You don't have to, put them on a platform of, hey, y'all don't go support. You can pull somebody to the side and tell them what the situation or what the issue may be, or send them an email or something like that. And even if you're good at something, then they're not offer your services. Put them on a platform.
Yeah.
And I'll follow up with that, Dr. Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. Then I want to flip over to Alex.
Okay. So, many times when we have this discussion about Black-owned businesses, we approach it from like a micro aspect and not a macro aspect. And so, at the beginning of this event today, we heard from Billy with the African American Chamber and all of the amazing programs that the African American Chamber is lifting up. And they're an institution locally right here in Shreveport that has the ability to support African American businesses. And we also have the Minority Supplier Institute. We also have the Strategic Action Council. We also have the Fair Share program of the city of Shreveport. And so just as we have to support Black-owned businesses individually, we also have to support, understand, and recognize that there are institutions here that folks are paying their money into that could be supporting Black-owned businesses by providing capital, providing information, connecting folks to these various procurement institutions within our various local entities, such as the school board, such as the city of Shreveport, such as the Cattle Commission. Because when it comes to community, I know that Black and white folks both understand that if we want to bring our communities out of poverty, we have to have viable Black-owned businesses that are making a good amount of money to be able to support all of these initiatives. So I think that not only in addition to supporting, we have to hold these entities that are getting thousands and perhaps even millions of dollars of money to support Black-owned businesses and getting contracts and capital in doing what it is their mission is slated to actually do.
So I want to jump in on this, Christy, because I knew you were going to ask this question, so I prepared just a few things. So I want to play a little game of Did You Know? And so did you know how long does money stay in our African-American community? And I know that Billy talked about it earlier, that it only stays in our community only 6 hours. 6 hours in the African-American community. Black-owned businesses are only getting 2% of the Black consumer dollar. That's our dollar. If Black consumers only spend 10% of their income with Black businesses, it could generate about 1 million jobs when we start talking about economic security for African-Americans. And after the government, Black-owned businesses are the largest employer for African-Americans. Now, if we know all of this, then the only way that we are going to actually ensure that we are working in our communities to spend money with African-American businesses is to be intentional. We must be intentional. You've got to go to the African-American Chamber of Commerce to find out, where is the plumber? Where is the person that can cut my grass? We need to make sure, do we have anybody that has any grocery stores? Or where is the closest Black grocery store? Do we have anybody that sells gas, that has a Black gas station? It's an intentional impact that we can have, but it's only going to begin if we are serious about doing this. We can have this conversation all day long. But if you don't take the first step to know where the Black businesses are in your community and then make it a point to only use those businesses, then shame on us.
Good.
That's great. Business owner Alex, hop in there. Tell us what you
Oh
think.
yeah, I'm gonna have to piggyback off what Dr. Pierre just stated. Until we have a plan and we keep up with our own narrative, until we're able to do exactly what she said. I'm a part-time city attorney down in Natchitoches now, so I represent the mayor and the council. But what I saw was an opportunity. An opportunity was to find the business owners, find each one of them, stores. I don't care what you sell. Give me a list of those people, and what we're going to do is develop these businesses, and we're going to come back and look in 3 years and see what we did. And I mean, we're going to hold the community accountable. We have the list. We're going to make it happen. See, too many times we like these debates. I'm gonna tell you one thing about these debates: they're good debates to have this type of conversation. But from these conversations, need to develop a plan and an action and hold everybody accountable to it. And Ms. Williams, I'm gonna go back to that first question because I know we're running out of time.
Yes.
But I want to state that we need to create our own narrative in order for any group or political group to take our vote, for us to give them our vote. We need to give them our plan before the election, which means that our debates start a year in advance before they choosing whoever president they want. I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat. We've done the work. We provided the plan. In order for you to get this 90%, we need this, and they need to produce. And so we need to be more proactive. Our community got safety issues. We got housing issues. We have so many of our Black males in jail for nonviolent offenses. We have every fundamental issue as being American as an issue. Our Black community, we're in a crisis. We need to be bailed out. But since this government decided not to bail us out, we need to develop our own plan. And like Dr. Pierre said, economically, it's over 40 million Black Americans in the United States of America. If we only invested $1,000 each into that 40 million, it'll be a different next month. The next 30 days will be different for us. So yes, we need to hold ourselves accountable. Let's start and let's change where we stand.
Right.
We control the narrative. Let them read about us. Let them try to understand what we're doing. I'm tired of talking about them all the time. They'll come see us when we have something to offer. And for us to offer something, we must change ourselves. We change ourselves locally. We change ourselves statewide. And we change ourselves as Black Americans. We add value to ourselves. And then any market, whether it be Asian, white, whatever market, they're going to come see us. But we need to add value. Shreveport need to add value to us. For us to change in Shreveport, add value. Find those businesses, change everyone, change everything, and then we'll be good to go.
Yeah. So to your point, and a fantastic segue into this, and I'm so glad that you tied in your comments to that earlier question, because that phenomenal comments. In 1950, Shreveport, Louisiana, and Atlanta, Georgia, were approximately similar southern cities relative to structure and population. In 1973, Atlanta elected its first Black mayor, Maynard Jackson. He implemented an aggressive DBE program. And for those of you that are not familiar, that's a disadvantaged business enterprise. He implemented a DBE program in the city of Atlanta. And that participation in plan included Black-owned businesses and major city contracts. Today, Atlanta is a thriving American city for Black people. Do you favor an aggressive DBE policy for our city? And if so, how do we implement such a policy? I'll maybe start with you, Marquis.
The simple answer is yes. I absolutely favor it. And how do we implement it? Well, we've got some things in place. Everybody has to be on board with it.
Right.
Everybody has to be on board with it. Listen, I've been in business for myself for the last 15 years. And the first thing I am not going to do is I'm not going to discount my product or my service for anybody. I'll tell you and give you a recommendation for somebody else. So please don't come and ask me to give you a discount on this, because I'm proud of the work that I provide. But we also have to make sure that the people that are asking for the goods and services believe that the same thing, and they're going to make sure that they're paying the same amount that they're going to pay for transportation business.
Right.
And we have to have policies in place that we're going to follow. Unfortunately, we don't always follow the policies and things that we have in place. It's unfortunate, but it is a fact.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Dr. Williams, I'd like to add this.
Please.
Sitting on the Cattle Parish School Board, we do have a program called Opportunity Cattle. This program is pretty much like the Fair Share program with the city of Shreveport. I myself this is one of, I guess, my mission is to ensure that more minorities or local folks that are local. I'll just throw that out because we don't want to send business to Texas or Mississippi or Alabama. We at least want folks not only in Louisiana, but really right here in Shreveport. So I just wanted to throw that out, but you have to remain engaged. It goes back to that engagement because you have to know when those opportunities come up and when it's time for bids and so forth. So I want to throw that out that I have a commitment to ensure that we have, again, that opportunity right here in cattle. I would like to again say this, but are we as a community willing to participate, not only in the opportunity cattle? I use Southern University of Shreveport as an example. We almost have to beg people to come to Southern in our own communities when the value is there. The value of an education actually is probably better as a Southern University of Shreveport as than some of our other neighboring institutions. So I just want to throw that out when we talk about building a Black business or building these institutions. I use my high school in my district, Booker T. Washington. Many of our folks in our community don't want to send our kids back to where we got our foundation, just like a Black church. It was a great documentary on that many of us watched, talking about the foundation of our Black culture, which was the Black church. Well, I just again want us to think about that. But I just wanted to throw Opportunity Cattle out as one entity or one function we have on the Cattle Parish School Board for opportunities for not only minorities, but also folks here in Shreveport.
Mel, I want to jump in. I've got one more thing to say real quick. You know, when we start talking about our programs, you know, they're fine. But what we have are employees that are overseeing these fair share programs that bundle all of these large contracts together, and African-American businesses can't participate in them. So it's twofold. We have to have the folks that are in the government to break some of these contracts out, but we got to make sure that we as African-American businesses are prepared to participate in these opportunities when you do it as well. So not only do we have to hold them accountable, but we have to be accountable ourselves. So it's on, the onus is on us to make sure that we are prepared, that we can, when we get ready to bid on this, that we are making sure that we have our financials in place. Yes, you need to do financial, business owners. You need to keep up with your receipts. You need to file your taxes. That's just simple stuff. We're known not to be able, not to do that. That's a real challenge that we have to break these cyclical cycles and chains that we have in order to do that, to make sure we're prepared for those opportunities that are out there for us. And
if I can add, I've been in business for 20 years, and over the last 12 years, I've been involved in a lot of financial transactions. And any financial institution, any entity is willing to loan you money and give you what you need if you have all your documents in order. So if you have, like Shreveport, we have a lot of different minority entities in place to help businesses. We need to make sure those businesses engage with those institutions and they just go through the bread and butter of financials, permits, all your stuff in order so you can get the financials. And how do we do that? Again, We need to identify all those businesses. We need to put them with those institutions. They need to offer their services. Businesses need to do what they need to do. And then we have a product that we can market, and they can get business from the city and other entities. But in each community, let's say Shreveport got 5 communities, right? Not a city councilman, not a state rep. We need persons in that community to just represent that community on the business side, right? And identify who's business owners in your community.
Amen.
Just like, you know, any other thing, like running for an election. Find a leader in that community for businesses, locate all those businesses, put them with the institutions, and then we have a product that we can market. But we have to actually do it. So that requires good leadership. And it sounds like Dr. Pierre maybe take on that leadership role. She's passionate about it. I'm passionate about it, and I hear everybody on this call is passionate about it. And on the business side, we can't change our community unless we have some money.
I agree with
Right.
all of that.
Yeah.
That's gonna take
That's
us.
right.
That's gonna take people.
It's gonna take.
That's gonna take everybody on this panel and the last panel. It takes us. Next year, when we come back to
Yes.
this deal, we should have grown several businesses. We should be talking
Right.
about, you know what? We created this and we did this the next time we see each other. Even though we just visiting on this panel next time. Right? So
Yeah,
again,
I think
we're
one,
gonna hold ourselves accountable. You know, we have to talk about everybody behind us and who we don't know. I see some people on this call right now I'm looking at who has all the ability to do it. Let's identify somebody. Let's grow somebody. Then we come back and talk.
Make it happen.
That's right.
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 I
I
want
think
to
on
add
what Dr.
something to that.
Oh, go ahead.
We were talking about bridging the gap. And so specifically when it comes to Black business, I do see that there is a generational gap when it comes to sharing information. And when it comes to the contracts and instituting programs, you may have had a business that was in business 20 years, but how do they reach back and mentor another Black business that may be struggling? And so sometimes I see that as a barrier, you know, in a turnover in the Black community. We are always having turnover because we don't have that mentorship. There are so many silos. If you get a contract, you don't want somebody else to get the same contract when it should be opportunity for all and people creating space for other Black people to
Right.
also receive those contracts. So I think Black businesses and Black business owners and mentors need to keep that open mind and, you know, reaching back and teaching other millennials how they get to that level to be successful as well.
And if I can add, I'm gonna tell you one other thing, and this is the last thing I'm gonna say, I believe. But even our office, anytime a young lawyer come to this town, most of them, we let them come to our office, work for free, get cases for free, tell them how the practice of law go. And then we've had over the last 10 years, lawyers come in, work for us for 2 years, leave. Didn't pay any rent, didn't do anything. All they did was learn, listen to Shantae and myself talk, and they went off. And it happened over the number of years. And that's, as business owners, we should be grabbing folks just like that, just saying, hey, this is what I'm doing, and get them and go through a little CLA with you, education, and move on to the next level. But we need those type of plans in place for Shreveport, because we got so much young talent that leaves this area that's in other places, in New Orleans and
Doing
Houston.
amazing things.
Yeah, so if we had them all in North Louisiana, game over. New Orleans had to come see us. That's my last.
Kind of what Dr. Pierre was saying about the contracts and things like that. We have to, and Omar, we have to get our entities and these organizations have to be more intentional about knowing about these contracts, and we have to be more intentional about creating these businesses. For instance, we create the same kind of businesses sometimes over and over and over. Well, okay, if Uncle Chris got the lawn care service, we don't need to keep recreating lawn care services. We need to look at these contracts and be able to break them down and say, okay, we need somebody to do this. We need somebody to do that. We need, instead of recreating the wheel over and over again, we need to get more diverse in the businesses that we create in our community as well, to be able to go after some of these contracts and things like that on the city and federal level.
Yeah. So thank you. A fantastic conversation today. This always happens to me when I'm moderating this annual State of Black Shreveport. I feel like this conversation, this fireside chat, which, last week, if you braved Shreveport Snowmageddon, we could have had a fireside chat about it, and it would have been welcomed for all of us to stay warm. But I always feel like the conversation could go on and on. But to Attorney Alex Washington's point, let's make the conversation into action. So I'm encouraging all of those who are watching us today to like, share, repost, but also to put some of these practices in action. Some of the comments, some of the thoughts that we talked about today, make sure that you are doing your part to make sure that Shreveport is a better place to live and a better place to work and a better place for everyone and for our children. I want to thank everyone who participated on our panel, our millennials, Scooter Burton, Sylvester Marshall, Brittany Dunn, Kamisha West, and Omari Hosang. I also want to thank our Gen Xers, Marquis Pierre, Theron Jackson, Alex Washington, Felicia Hamilton, Terrence Vincent, and Rick Gallo. I see their pictures coming up. Thank you all for a phenomenal day. I'm going to also thank our sponsors. We got to thank our sponsors, the Cawthorn Financial Group, LLC, Washington and Wells Attorneys at Law, Redwood Property Management, McDonald's Griggs Enterprise, and Dorn and Cawthorn LLC Attorneys at Law. Thank you so much to our sponsors. We appreciate you, and we thank you so much for your work in the community. We will now prepare for our presentation of awards. I think we have.
Okay, good afternoon, folks. Can they hear me? I am back, and
there.
What we were trying to do, there was two people who were scheduled to come in earlier, the mayor and Derek Henderson. I am back. We want to see whether or not we can get those persons, if Brent can get those persons in.
Awesome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And also work on Mayor Perkins. Go ahead, Mr. Henderson.
Good afternoon. The state of Black Shreveport would like to recognize some local individuals who answer their clarion call to commit the selfless act of service, whether commissioned by the Almighty, elected by the people, or appointed by the board. Black Shreveport and all of Shreveport benefited because of them. And they are Dr. E. Edward Jones Sr., Dr. Harry Blake Sr., Dr. Brady Blade, Bishop Fred Caldwell Sr., Reverend A.J. Holland, Reverend Joseph Papa Joe Martin, Reverend Danny Mitchell Sr., Reverend Murphy Hunt, Reverend C.C. McLean Sr., Alphonse Jackson, James Stewart, Joseph Joe Shine, Hillary Huckabee, Esquire, Reverend Herman Farr, Roy Carey, Maxine Sarpy, Ollie S. Tyler, Ursula Hardy, Mildred Pugh, Jerry Tim Brooks, David Winden, Donald H., Hersey Wilson, Senator Gregory Greg Tarver, Barbara Norton, Willie Critton, Shirley Wills, Dr. Ray Belton, Miss Eddie Jones, Mr. Leonard Barnes, Miss Althea Fuller, Miss Dorothy Simon Johnson, Miss Lily Bradford, Mr. Hugh Bradford, Coach Carl Pearson, Miss Liberta Miles, Mrs. Vertis S. Pruitt, Mr. Thomas Howard, Dr. Mary Nash Robinson, Coach Wendell Delaney, Calvin Lester Sr., Wilbert Williams, Mary Johnson, Sweet Lady of the Peppermints, Boogaloo Cooper, Baruti, Hershey Brown, Linda Scott, Charlie Jefferson, and E.P. Wimberly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Derek. And I want to ask Brent, that we were able to get the mayor logged in. If not, then we'll move on right to the presentations. Right before we do the presentation, I do want to applaud all the people that were on our panel today, the Gen X panel, the Generation X, the Millennial panel, the Gen X panel. The guys did a phenomenal job, excellent conversation, and definitely a conversation that needs to continue. I always like to tell people that everything starts, whether it's in Shreveport, state of Louisiana, United States, it starts with a conversation. And so I'm hopeful and desirous that out of this conversation, some of the things that were mentioned in that last piece of discussion, we can implement. I am committed to going back and doing our cash mobs, which was a collective effort or coalition building effort with State of Black Shreveport, NAACP, Minority Suppliers Institute, and the African American Chamber. So Mr. Anderson was on earlier. We need to convene that conversation and see how we can do that and maybe retune it or refine it for a 2020-2021 version. But this has been an excellent discussion, great dialogue, and we look forward to doing our 10th annual next year. Hopefully we'll be out of COVID and we will be able to be amongst one another and have a series of events the last week of February of 2022. Now we'll move right into our presentations of awards. And Brent, if the mayor logs in, just let me know. What we try to do annually in this community with the State of Black Shreveport is to award and recognize the unsung heroes, people who are doing things in this community who may not always be recognized at a broader scale, but to let them know that in the community, in the Black community, we do appreciate them and their work is dynamic. And we have a few awards that we've done purposely to name after people who have gone before us, who probably that are no longer with us, but the work they've done, they're left behind. And so the first award that we give out on an annual basis is called the Alphonse Jackson Business Service Award, which is typically awarded to a local politician or a local leader who promotes African-American owned businesses in this local community. And so this year's recipient of the Alphonse Jackson Business Service Award is no other than our own state representative, Mr. Sam Jenkins, state representative. Let's give him a round of applause. All righty. And we will get these awards to the individuals sometime next week. Our next award is what we call the Business Legacy Award. This award is given to a Black-owned business who's been in this community 25 years plus with continuous service to the local community. This year's Business Service Award is a company that has been in the city of Shreveport several decades, and it is awarded to no other than White's Printing and Graphic Design. And I just want to read a portion of this. It says a Business Legacy Award presented to White's Printing and Graphic Design for more than 68 years of continuous service in the city of Shreveport and continued commitment to providing custom printing services to the African American community. Let's give them a round of applause. Now, our next award is what we've always tried to do here at the State of Black Shreveport is to recognize up and coming talent, because the youth in your community are the people that offer continuity to whatever movement you want or desire to put in place. And so from day one, we've always included both millennials in awards and millennials in the planning process and on the panel discussion. This year's Emerging Leader Award, and let me note that it's given to a male and a female. So this year's recipient of the female award for Emerging Young Leader is none other than Ms. Brittany Dunn, who was one of our panelists today. So let's give her a big round of applause. Our male recipient this year, and he's been with us from day one with the State of Black Shreveport, is no other than our own production guy, video choreographer today, Mr. Brent Ladden. And let's give him a round of applause. Our next award is an award that we developed about 3 or 4 years ago, and it goes in tandem with what we were talking about at the latter part of this conversation. Excuse me, entrepreneurship in the African American business, in the community. We want to recognize people. We want to recognize people who are entrepreneurs, because an entrepreneur is the person that takes the risk. They're creative, and not only being creative, they're a businessman. They wear several hats. And this year's award is awarded to Darius Spales, who is the owner of Red Barn Cajun Crawfish, which is he's a thriving business. He's an excellent entrepreneur with the energy and quest you need to be successful. So, as we move in our conversation about supporting Black-owned businesses, let's make sure that we support Red Barn Cajun Crawfish. And let's give him a round of applause. Our next award is what we call the Spirit of Excellence in Service Award. That's an individual who are doing things in the community that they are passionate about. They don't get paid to do it. Oftentimes it's volunteer work. But because they're so passionate about it and we feel and see the spirit of what they have done, we award these individuals. This year, we're going to give 2 awards away because there are some people that's been in this community, haven't been recognized for a long period of time. And, you know, with COVID going on and people passing, we want to give these people their flowers while they're living. So the first recipient this year of this award is no other than Miss Mary Johnson. Miss Mary Johnson was the organizer and creator of the Peppermint Group that was very, very popular in Shreveport for a number of years. She took people all around the country to perform in parades. She did mentoring of young ladies, and she's been a staple in this community for a long time. And we want to give her flowers while she's living. Miss Mary Johnson of the Peppermints. Thank you very much. Give her a round of applause. Now, and our next recipient of this award is a local preacher, pastor, who's been doing a lot of work. He has this school called the School of Greatness. And I was afforded the opportunity of meeting him when I became a Kettle Parish Commissioner back in 2015. And I got a chance to see some of his work close up. And this guy is doing phenomenal work in the country, out of the country. His School of Excellence is housed at Woodlawn High School in District 6. So it's no other than Bishop Sean Cooper. We want to applaud him today and thank him for the work and service he provides to this local community. Last but certainly not least, is a award that we just coined on last year. And I like to fashion myself as a student of history, and the study and development of history always lets you know from whence we come and what we need to do in a contemporary context. So on last year, we created this award called the Willie Burden Historian Award. We give this award to an African-American person who is walking in the traditions of Mr. Burden, who wrote a couple of books. And I understand that Scooter recently explained that he's going to be putting that book back into circulation as a reprint. And we're glad to hear that. But we give this award to a person who is following in the continuity of the history of the African-American community. And this year, we award none other the Willie Burden Historian Award, which was presented to Professor Keena M. Franklin of Louisiana State University, Shreveport. And let's give her a round of applause for her work. Once again, we want to thank all of our award recipients for the work they're doing in this community. And we look forward next year to being able to award some other very well-deserving individuals an award. So at this particular time, we'll let the mayor, he had a family emergency earlier today and he wasn't able to come in and give his opening comments. So, but there's nothing wrong with giving closing comments. So go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Cawthorn. I appreciate the invite, and sorry I'm late, everybody, but I understand we had a phenomenal program today. But good afternoon. Annually, the State of Black Shreveport is served as a platform to spotlight the progress of the African-American community while examining the challenges facing Blacks in Shreveport today. In its 9th year, this symposium and economic summit has transitioned to the virtual format that we're in right now because we're still in this COVID-19 pandemic, and I appreciate you all for being safe out there. But now more than ever, it is imperative for us to work together for an equitable future and address disparities in education, healthcare, and tighten the digital divide that exists within our city. Today's conversation can serve as a catalyst for growing, thriving communities and building upon city, parish, and statewide policies. Programs just like this one provide community members with the opportunity to engage in a meaningful dialogue in hopes that we all can serve as change makers for Shreveport. On behalf of the city of Shreveport, I welcome you all to this year's program, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope everyone is watching today will walk away with the heightened enthusiasm to make a difference in our city.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And having said that, we will go ahead and conclude. I just want to do three things before we conclude. I just want to thank our sponsors once again for coming up, stepping up, and making this program a possibility and a success. I want to once again recognize the members of our steering committee for 2021, Marion Hartley, Derek Henderson, Herschel Jones, Kevin Lester Jr., Sylvester Marshall, Kamisha West, Ryan Williams, Dr. Terrence Benson, and myself, Lynn Carthon. And the last closing comments I want to make, as I read the comment thread, our persons talking about implementation of action plans after this conversation. And that is very much paramount. I think we find ourselves in 2021 with all the discussion of race and race disparity, and we had a good dialogue as it relates to the Black Lives Matter piece. I think it's time in Shreveport, Louisiana, that we take on the challenge of the difficult, uncomfortable conversation that needs to be had to bring parity to all communities of the city of Shreveport, roll our sleeves up, and make a city that's situated and located in a space to be successful, to go head on and be successful. And the last thing I want to offer is that I would love no more than having a conversation with the baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Generation Z in sometime in the future. And that we continue to understand that if we're going to move forward as an African-American community to be a subset of the whole, we have to address issues within our community, and then we're able to lock arms and embrace our broader community, or our white brothers and sisters, our Asian brothers and sisters, and our Hispanic brothers and sisters. So you guys do have a great day, and God bless you. God keep you. This is my prayer. Thanks.